Hello everybody, welcome to this week's episode of Robin Hood Studios. I am Cameron Porter, your host as always. Today we are talking, of course, about editing. So, editing is a great way to increase the production quality of your videos. But with each video, you do need to ask yourself, do I actually need to edit this? Of course, if you're going live, you won't be editing. Obviously, because it's live, you don't have the opportunity. But for things like this, where you're just talking to a camera the way I am, you can ask yourself, well, do I need to edit this? Should I? And honestly, our recommendation, of course, is always to take the time, to put in the effort to edit. But sometimes, it's just not worth it. Now, if you choose to edit, then the next decision you have to make is, what do I edit with? There are so many options these days for editing. We won't really go through them all here, but depending on your platform, whether you want to edit on a Windows computer, a Mac computer, an iPhone, an Android phone, a Chromebook, whatever it is that you want to edit on, you've got to find those options for you. Just go to, if you're on a computer, just go into your browser and type video editing software for Windows, video editing software for Mac. Mac is great because they got iMovie that comes built in, and iMovie is great for consumer stuff. If you're on other platforms, you can go to the App Store, you can go to the Google Play Store, depending on where it is. Just type in video editor, video editing, and you'll be able to find different softwares that all have reviews and ratings, and they'll be able to give you a lot more information than we can here. So when you're making the choice, that's how I'd recommend going about it. There are free options, but video editing is complicated and it takes a lot of finesse to make a really good video editing software. So I would recommend that you budget some money to pay for some good software rather than just using whatever's available for free. That said, now that you've chosen your software, you have basically three things that you need to worry about when you're just getting started with editing. Okay, three things that you can do to take your very simple videos to a little bit higher of a production standard. The first thing is an intro and an outro. If you have a nice professional intro graphic that comes up with your logo, like a fade up with a white background of your logo and your name and some nice music, that's a great way to start a video. Sets the right tone. And then it dips into whatever you're shooting with, and who knows, at that point it's anyone's game. But then it also finishes up with that same graphic, with that same sequence, the graphic fading up and the nice music. So at the very least, even if everything you shot is complete garbage, at the very least, you start on a high note and you end on a high note. And the more practice you get, the less likely it's gonna be garbage. So keep on going. Now, after you've got the intro and outro figured out, the next thing that you really wanna focus on is going to be transitions. Now, transitions, that's just a word for any time that you go from one camera angle or one shot to another shot. But basically you've got three transition options. You've got cut, you've got fades, and you've got dips. So a cut is exactly what it sounds like. It's, in fact, we'll demonstrate it for you here. I'm like this, we're gonna cut, okay, that was a cut. Now, we're gonna do the same thing with a fade. This is a fade. I'm like this, and now I'm like this. Okay, that's a fade. Now, we're going to do a dip. So a dip is similar to a fade, it just has something in the middle, a solid color like black or white. So you have this, and I'm like this. That's a dip. It has been called a crossfade, or no, just a fade. I don't know. There's some different terms, but the most common one that you'll see in editing softwares is the word dip. Those are really handy, particularly cuts, because you can shorten the video when your talent or whoever's talking, when they get redundant, they say the same things over and over, or they start to stutter, or they cough, or they sneeze, or they utter an obscenity. So it's good to cover those things. But it can also be really good for dramatic effect, like when you want that really dramatic close-up. Kind of get creative, and the more creative you are, the more personality you put into your editing, the more it's going to jive with your audience. Okay, so you've got your intro, outro, you've figured out your cuts, all that. Next, titles. Titles are an integral part of most videos because they communicate visually a name or words that we are hearing audibly as well. So the most common use, I would say the first thing that you want to do with titles is what's called a lower third. So you've seen these on the news. Bloomberg uses these all. I mean, pretty much every broadcast station on the planet uses lower thirds. All that means is something that comes out at the bottom, usually like an animated thingamajig, with words, with the name of the person who's talking and their title underneath. That's your standard lower third. More modern lower thirds actually completely omit those graphics, and it's just the words, and the words kind of fade in, or they float up and float down, or something like that. And it's more clean. It's kind of a more clean. We don't have as much to prove type of a look to it, if that makes sense. So you don't have to do the graphics. You can. There are some really cool things out there. It's good for branding if you want to. If you're doing regular content and you want to have that content branded to remind people what they're watching and and the source of what they're watching, yeah, you can do that with a lower third by just using the correct colors. If your colors are red and silver, you can use red and silver lower thirds, and people are subtly reminded of the source of the video that they're watching. Or you can just do plain old text. But they're called lower thirds because they appear in the lower third of the video. So where I'm centered on the video, our editor has a choice. He can put the lower third here, he can put my lower third here, he can put my lower third here. If your subject is in this side of the frame, you'd probably want to put the lower third here. And this is common. If you're doing an interview where they're looking off camera, this is where you'd want them. And same thing if they're looking this way. You'd want them over here, and then the lower third would pop out right there. So that's what I would recommend as far as titles go. You can also use titles to introduce new segments. So for example, if you are conducting an interview, your interviewee was mic'd like I am, but your interviewer was not wearing a mic. So rather than hear the terrible, garbly, echoey audio of the person asking the questions, you can cut to a title with the question, and then cut back as the interviewee answers. So for example, well, I have amazing hair primarily because of genetics, but I also have a very strict regimen of shampooing and conditioning every morning. Conditioning is totally a verb, okay? Okay, so that's another use of titles. So hopefully that gives you a good start, a good guide on how you can use titles and how you can use cuts, fades, and dips, and also how you can use intros and outros. Let us know in the comments if there's a lot of you that need help figuring out how to make a good intro and how to make a good outro. Let us know. We can make a video about that. We want to make content that is the most applicable to our audience as possible. So just let us know what that is and we'll do it. So thank you. We will see you next week. Again, I'm Cameron Porter with Robin Hood Studios.